Hello, this is Frank DeFreitas, and welcome to HoloTalk for the week of January 18th, 1999. Our guest this week, who, by the way, is the first guest of this new year on HoloTalk, is Arlene Jurewicz, who is going to tell us about her work with holography as an artist and educator. Just a quick note before we switch over to the interview. If you've been following the emergence of laser pointer holography over the past few weeks, you won't want to miss the 8x10 reflection hologram that was just created using the $7.99 laser pointer that we've been talking about. Just go over to the HoloWorld main page at www.holoworld.com and click on the laser pointer link to see the results. Okay, let's get right to the interview with Arlene this week, and also don't forget to visit Arlene's website, and you'll find a link to her site located right on the HoloTalk page. I'm not going to come back on after the interview, so I'll thank you now for tuning in. And don't forget to tune in each week for a new HoloTalk show. Here's Arlene. Okay, I have on the line, who I've had on for a few minutes already, but you can't listen to it because it was our little private conversation, but she's on the other end of the line now, is Arlene Jurewicz. Arlene, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Welcome to HoloTalk.
Thank you.
And I think this is going to be a very interesting show because for the past few weeks we've been talking a lot about technical holography and how you do this and how you do that, and finally we've got someone on the show that's going to talk about what to do with it once you have the hologram, because Arlene has some very unique ways of using holography, both as an artist and as an educator. And you've been involved with holography. You got started probably around the time I did. I got started about 83.
Yeah, I got started around 84, 85.
Yeah.
I built a lab in a converted barn with a wood-burning stove.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Which tended in the winter to be a little problematic with the airflow because I had to wait for the stove to become cool so that there was not a lot of air moving around in the area.
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting way to make holograms, but something that I seem to be drawn to doing.
And you started out by doing marine life right from your area where you live, right?
Yeah.
Documenting
I would go and collect different types of marine life on the shore, and I made mostly single beam reflection holograms, and just started to almost document marine life holographically.
Yeah.
All different kinds of types of seaweed, sea urchins, mussel shells.
Now, not to head off onto the technical once again, because I want to try and stay away from the technical aspects, but maybe the listeners would be very curious up until this point, because obviously a lot of people are fascinated with marine life. You go down the shore a lot and this and that. Was there anything special you had to do to these specimens in order to make holograms with them?
Well, they had to be dry, and I actually learned how to dry. My lab often smelled like low tide.
Okay. So does mine.
I had to dry the specimens, and then used kind of a pewter material, usually paint, to brighten them up so they'd be able to be reflective when you made the reflection hologram. So it was one of these things where I tried to make them look like they do on the shore, but at the same time they had a kind of a frost quality to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a balance between letting them look natural, or as natural as a dried specimen can look, versus what you needed to do so they would be able to be reflective enough to be shown in the hologram.
Yeah. And then you got involved. I'm going by memory on a lot of this. The next thing I remember reading is that you were using holograms to demonstrate consciousness and perception. How did you make that jump?
Well, I got interested in prism and Bohm and a lot of the, holographic theories that were kind of abound in the field at the time. And because I come from a background in education, and I was really looking for a way to show holograms to children, so it kind of really started with that. And the holograms with children became, it was hard for them to see, look at the holograms on a wall or down on a table. And I wanted to develop some way that they could be interactive with them. So actually, what the puzzles, I developed the puzzles out of some of the work that I saw that Margaret Benyon was doing.
Yes.
And I began to cut my puzzles, cut the holograms into different kinds of puzzle shapes, tangrams, odd shapes, 4, dividing in 4, and sometimes even 8, and giving them to kids to play with, and then also taking lamps that on a tabletop display that they could move either the lamp around or the puzzle pieces around and experience the hologram that way. And so it was a really interesting, interactive way to show holograms. And I think the kids are very fascinated that, well, here was one hologram of one crab. But wait a minute, you could make 4 crabs out of this, each at a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that whole thing was just very fascinating to them. And when I also started to show them to adults, and also from some of the study and reading that I did, I also started to look at the hologram as more of a metaphoric and view of people and how they view themselves, the world and how we view the world. I know with one little nature club that I was involved with, we looked at just if you look at terms of things like pollution in the world and having a hologram, if you try to look at what was going on in the world and the different layers of atmosphere, if you looked at it holographically, it was very difficult to see that it was not all related to each other and interactive to each other. And so there were many different ways. I think it was kind of on an individual basis that I looked at this, giving people different holograms and just recording or talking to them about what they perceived in it. And I just found it, it's for me, it's kind of become a basis of how I look at things now. It's one of those things when you finally come across something like this, you can't go back to an old way of thinking.
Yes.
It kind of becomes part of you and ingrained in you. So that's what, as I mentioned to you before, holography is a real personal and private thing for me at this point. And it's interesting that I don't push it anymore, but I let it grow as it leads me to different areas, and I can see its use in different areas without forcing it, I guess, is what I'm going to say.
I'd also like to let the listeners know you wrote a paper about a lot of this, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
In Leonardo.
Yeah, I was in Leonardo. I was in the first issue. The only had an educational section, and I was the only article in the educational section.
Was this the special holography issue?
Yes, this is a special double issue of when it was published in San Francisco.
Do you remember what the number of the issue is?
Let me see.
I do. That's why I do this show. Volume 22, numbers 3 and 4, 1989 issue of Leonardo, the Journal of the International Society for the Arts, Sciences, and Technology, in case any of the listeners want to look that up. Who else better to do this show, huh? And then you went on the road for a little bit. I know you sent a few notes to me, but I remember that you used to use dance students at certain times to show wave theories as well, right?
Well, again, it's my background on what works for kids, And, I did a lot of presentations for, well, I even did it for preschool. I mean, I was teaching about lasers and wavefront interference with even preschool kids, but not in, just in an awareness sense, but, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, those kids want to move and experience things. So I developed movement presentations on what happens inside a laser, and had dancing photons inside a laser. Kids often fought over who was going to be the weak mirror and the strong mirror.
That's interesting.
Tape with 633 nanometers to kind of show wavelength that the tube had to be, in increments of 633. And just all different kinds of activities, putting yourself in and I still work with some of this work, putting a frame around a person and then putting a dot in the center of their nose and talking about, and having another person come up and look at where you can see that dot from.
Oh, okay.
To show, how a hologram is created and why you can see it, that you're really looking, it's more like looking through a window on a frosty morning, that you scratch out one little piece that can see that way rather than, just describing it.
That's very good, yeah.
Yeah, I just found that, it's getting, having it as interactive as possible seemed to work. And also, most kids, I think, would enjoy being participants in learning rather than just having information given to them. So.
I'm amazed at how many people are going to start describing it as a frosted window where you've scratched out a little hole to look through after listening to the show, of which I will be one of them. I used to use the window analogy as well, but I think the frosted
right
window
now
with the hole is
it's
even better.
almost zero here.
Yeah.
And we've had snow for 2 days, and we have over a foot of snow.
No kidding.
So, and, this is Maine, it snows here.
Yeah.
Frosted windows are something that in the morning you often scratch, see outside.
What was your involvement with this, the first anniversary of this Alaskan oil spill, the work that you did for that? You traveled up there, right?
I didn't travel up there, but a holographic piece did.
Okay.
And that was a very interesting thing. I think, if I can recollect, I sent a piece down to you for a show 10 years ago.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. In fact, I'm looking at the poster now for that.
Yeah. And,
April 23rd to May 12th.
I heard about the spill, and I just had, a gut reaction. And I went into my lab, and I was looking at all my holograms, and I was trying to figure out, when I had holograms of nature, and I also had from another piece that I did on the sewing of Maine, which was a holographic state of Maine with dollar signs coming out of it. I had extra dollar signs left over, pseudoscopic dollar signs. And I just started to create this piece with imagery of a marine life and black oozy paint and stone, and then these pseudoscopic dollar signs which I cut out and put in different areas of the paint still. And it just was my reaction to it. I sent it down to you, and I believe it was in the show for a while. Then it came back here, and the University of Maine was doing a Marine Week, which I'm still kind of involved with, and one of their sessions was on oil spills, and they had invited somebody from Alaska to come and do a presentation there. So I showed them my piece, and it was exhibited at this conference, and the person from Cordova, Alaska saw it, and he was so taken with the piece that they decided to bring it to this island off the coast of Alaska to exhibit it for the anniversary of the spill. I did get some very interesting reactions from people to this particular piece because, you know, it was kind of like what the cost was to the environment and to people. And the strange thing about it was that there were people who made money out of this disaster. They stopped fishing, cleaned up, you know, the area, so they actually made money. Then there were other people who chose not to do that and were severely economically deprived. So, I mean, my first reaction was just an environmental cost. But then you went to the place that it actually happened, and the reaction was, you know, there were many different kinds of reactions to the piece. So it was really interesting for me that, you know, here I am on this coast of Maine, and, you know, where the Maine environment and environment of the ocean is a very important thing. And I was able to somehow do something and have it shipped someplace else where, you know, the people had a strong reaction to it. So it was for me it was a very touching moment to be able to, you know, have people see something and have a feel for it.
I'm going entirely by memory on this, but wasn't Barbara Bush at one of your shows?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I had a display piece of something I called Maine Stone, and it was actually one of my holograms without the dollar signs. I had a hologram of Maine that was projecting out of a piece of granite stone that I had a stone cutter cut into. And it was a show in Kennebunkport. And it was very interesting to me because all these young guys with little earphones and walkie-talkies started coming into this exhibition area. And I, at first, didn't really understand what was going on. And next thing I knew, there came Barbara Bush in a bright blue running suit. And she came up to it, looked at it, looked at me, and didn't know what it was. And so I started to explain it to her. So, yeah, that was unexpected and a pretty interesting thing to happen.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Yep. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back.
Okay.
Hold on.
Would you like to make your own one-of-a-kind hologram and learn how you can start making holograms on your own at the same time? You can do this and much more by attending one of Frank DeFreitas' holography workshops. From beginner to advanced, Frank's got a workshop that's just right for you. From single afternoon, evening, or weekend introductory workshops to Wednesday evening, 5-week complete courses. And don't forget his newest workshop, Laser Pointer Holography. Located just off the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike and Interstate 78, the studio is a quick, non-stop drive from the New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore, Washington, D.C. areas. For more information, call the studio's toll-free hotline at 1-800-458-3525 and begin your own journey with holography today. That's 1-800-458-3525 for more information on attending a Frank DeFreitas holography workshop today.
Still going tonight.
Yeah, well, we've got snow coming in. We've got ice right now.
Oh, dear.
So everything's just a layer of ice. Now that we're back, let's move on to your work with Jeff Murray, which everyone knows Jeff, and you had the opportunity to actually go out to the Holography Institute. Now, were they in Petaluma or San Francisco when you went out?
In San Francisco.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
My first collaboration with Jeff is I had this piece that I was thinking about doing for a long time, and, you know, I'm a mother and I have 2 sons, and one's 20 and one's 18, and I wanted to create a piece that had a reaction to family life and motherhood. And I have a book of signs that by Dover Publications that I'm looking at a series of very ancient symbols called the vicissitudes of family life. They're very simple signs on woman, man, conception, birth, pregnancy, birth, and family. And so I started to play with these signs and had a clay artist, a friend of mine, and I created several tablets to try to decide which kind of tablet would be the best to holograph. And what I wound up doing was sending about 4 or 5 of these to Jeff. One which was a pseudoscopic, a kind of reverse image, for a reversal image, and some signs that went in, some signs that popped out. And so when I finally got to Jeff's studio, which is another stand table system with a lot of optical equipment, and so I felt pretty much at home there.
I love sand tables.
Pardon?
I still have a sand table.
And Jeff is just, he's an amazing person.
Yeah.
I'm sure most of the people who are listening in tonight or who know of holography know Jeff. And he's a very talented technician. And if you have an idea and you want to work with him, he's right there for you. And so considering he has 2 children and I had 2 children, it was a very natural thing to try to develop this piece together.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked a couple of nights on it. We were developing. I did image plane reflection was at the first kinds of holograms that we did with it, and they were nice. They were red in color, and I liked them, but I kept on seeing this piece more as a white hologram, and Jeff and I were trying to figure out what we could do. And finally, we decided on changing. This was, as most holographers would probably know, middle of the night. We decided to do a white light transmission hologram with it. And so probably around 6 o'clock that next morning, we brought this piece up to the sunlight and just let the sunlight shine through it. And there was this incredible white image of all these ancient symbols. And when you looked at it from left to right, it became prismatic. So, I mean, it was such an incredible experience, to create something like this. And also, like I said, it was more for me a reaction to motherhood and family. And so it held a lot of strong ties for me.
Did you exhibit those holograms anywhere?
Well, this has been an interesting experience with this hologram, and no, I haven't exhibited it, but I did have a special translucent white frame for it, so it actually looks like it is hanging in very soft light on fish hooks. I mean, it's on fish wire. It's kind of, I think, an elegant way to display it.
Yeah. And
I have tried to get it into some exhibits, and really even showed it to Dr. Spock, because he happened, when he was still alive, he lived in Camden, Maine. And I have not really. It's funny though, because it is on my page, my web page, and I did have a reaction just the other week from a woman from Australia who emailed me that she was looking at my page and looking at this hologram and thought it was beautiful. So I haven't exhibited it, but I have had some reactions to it.
And that was, for the listeners, that was Dr. Spock, not Mr. Spock.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Spock. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you went back to working with your sea life once again with another grant that you had got, and you worked with...
Jeff and I I was very fortunate to get not a very big grant, but I got a John Anson Kitteridge Foundation grant. And with that, I talked to Jeff about trying to develop other kinds of holograms that I might use in perceptual work. And so he had just recently started working with holograms that were image plane but could be seen at almost 180 degrees.
Yeah.
And they, it was from a paper from China. And the masters were more kaleidoscopic. The setup that he used was in a kind of a mirrored box.
For the master?
For the master, yeah. And the holograms are beautiful. I mean, they're you can see them at almost any angle.
That's incredible.
And they're it's kind of been very interesting. I think for display purposes, they're very interesting. When I tried looking at them as a puzzle, they didn't quite do it for me as what I was hoping for. But in the same sense, though, I think they're beautiful holograms.
Are these reflection holograms?
They're reflection holograms, image plane reflection holograms. They just hover above the plate, and they can really be seen, left to right, almost 180 degrees. Yep.
Haven't seen any holograms like that yet.
Oh, well, I'll send you one.
Okay. Oh, I know what I wanted to mention to you. I'm remembering something about you working with a puppeteer.
Yes.
Which you don't have down on any of your sheets or anything, but I thought maybe the listeners would be interested in that.
Well, that's again, and this was going back, over 10 years, but I believe there might be other holographers I could name now, but pretty much 10 years ago, I don't think it was I don't think there was a big run on holography in Maine. So I was just someone who was trying many different ways to use the medium here, and I did teach a course at University of Maine on holography, just an adult, Ed come and make holograms course, and I had a puppeteer come, and she got so excited that we decided to develop holograms for some of her shows. And one was of a witch, which was we did a mold of a witch's face, and I did a hologram of it, a reflection hologram of it, so that it projected out as a stereoscopic image.
Did you do this in your lab?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we also did other holograms of nature. She did one show where she used, it was called the Magical Garden, that would come on and off. It would come on and off in the different, it would appear and disappear in the show. And we did it of nature and also of some vegetables, because she wanted a certain vegetable patch in this garden. That also led, I think in fact, when you had your paper version of the hologram, remember that?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
You mentioned, I think I wrote to you one time that I took some of those vegetables and took them to a Common Ground Fair and had an exhibition of holographic vegetables there.
Yeah.
And what a bloom ribbon. I mean, it was a big deal. But, so I tried to use holography, where can it be seen in not a obtrusive way, but here's an exhibit of vegetables in an organic, Common Ground Fair.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really, it was an interesting thing to do.
What were the reactions to the people at the fairgrounds when they saw the hologram? Were you around for a few days or so?
Some of it. Yeah. It was in a produce. I had them in a produce box.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat.
And I had them in a produce box, but the box was painted black, and there was a little light on one, to kind of project onto them. And they were called the light vegetables, Light. And people were just, most of the kids were just kind of fascinated, with them. And it was a little bit of a draw for their agriculture in the classroom section of the fair. So I think they enjoyed seeing them.
Yeah, there's all types of I still get emails with people telling me that holograms are like the work of the devil and things like that, because I get so many emails that every so often there's always a nutcase in there. And it's really surprising the different reactions that people have to seeing a hologram.
Huh. I haven't had that quite anyone feeling that. If anything, I get more of a reaction from the other end of it. I have shown the holograms in different kinds of schools, Montessori schools, Ashwood schools, which has more of like a spiritual bent to it, and I haven't quite gotten that type of reaction that they're in any way evil. And in fact, I get quite the opposite reaction. I remember, when I did a presentation at Images in Time and Space, I did work for a time with people from it was a workshop for people who had developmental disabilities, and it was really interesting. They kind of I talked to someone in a supermarket about some of the things I was doing, and they invited me in to work with some people as a kind of an extra thing for them to experience holograms, and we worked with some of my puzzles, and these are people who probably don't have good verbal and analytical abilities, but their visual spatial abilities were very good, and it was kind of very interesting to watch their reactions to the holograms, because one man who spent most of the day packing boxes looked at played with this puzzle and just said, these are wonderful, magical mirrors or windows of light, is how he described them, and his face just lit up. So I don't know, I don't quite see them as evil, I see them as something which is quite the opposite.
Yeah. Well, I seem to always draw the nutcases anyway.
Oh.
It's like a magnet. It's always been that way. What did you do at MIT, this Hollingworth conference for the gifted kids? You did a presentation there, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, again, this is one of those things where, people know that I do this. I was invited to look at their conference theme and see if I could develop a presentation regarding holographic perspective on this. I did talk to some of the organizers of the conference, and I came up with looking at kids who were extremely bright, and I was looking at kids who were extremely bright and who developmentally had different I don't think of the exact words used for this.
Perceptions?
Well, they had kids who had IQs of over 175, who had, say that you're a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
You like to read physics textbooks.
Oh,
or
come
have
on.
them read to you.
Really?
Yes.
No.
And emotionally, you're still a 5-year-old, but very sensitive 5-year-old, and your body was only 5.
And these 5-year-olds are reading physics?
Well,
textbooks?
some. I'm just saying there are unusual types of kids in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that they also have very super sensitive systems as well. And so, this particular group of individuals are parents and children who are trying to address children who are extremely bright, address their needs. And one of the things we explored in this participatory workshop that I had was to look at asynchronistic, and it's called asynchronistic development, to look at it through holographic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
In some way to try to put themselves together, because it's almost like their bodies don't match where their brains are.
Yeah.
So that was, that was an interesting and somewhat successful thing to do. It was, I think that I had some good reactions from it, and especially on an emotional sense where someone could be, happy or sad or glad, mad about a certain thing, and they could kind of put things together for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They could put their emotions together and realize that, it was just a perspective of themselves.
Yeah. And how was that received by everyone?
It seemed to be, people were interested in it. I think, I think one of the things about this whole in each piece is that it resonates with people,
mm-hmm.
And it gives them something to think about and ponder.
Mm-hmm.
And, that particular presentation, I felt that people were just kind of taking off with their own ideas and using it for themselves, and how they could, use it to whether it was an emotional issue they were working on, or an intellectual issue they were working on, that they could use, the puzzle in a metaphoric sense for themselves.
Yeah. I followed a lot of the Bohm, Prabhu, Krishnamurti work as well back in the 80s. I think it was a real hot topic.
Well, I guess I just want to say kind of in things coming, full circle for me. As I mentioned to you, I think a while back, my oldest son is a Eastern religion major at Bowdoin.
Yeah, I just read that.
And has had the wonderful opportunity to, next year, he's going on an early option to go to Sri Lanka next year,
mm-hmm.
to spend a semester abroad. And he's taking maybe a couple of my puzzles with him.
Definitely tell everyone where your other son was just accepted to.
Oh. He just got an early option to go to Harvard.
There you go, folks.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm quite proud of him.
Yeah, I imagine. So where are you now? What are you doing right now with holography? Anything? Are you still going into the lab? That's what's so neat about this laser pointer holography is.
Well, I'll tell you, that was, when I looked at what you had done yesterday, your Tuesday edition, all your listeners should really go to your webpage and look at this. I saw was it the fourth one you made?
Yeah, the fourth one was the charm.
Yeah, that was with the BB plates from Germany.
Yeah. And they're 2 years old, the ones I used.
Pardon?
They were 2 years old, the ones I used. Yeah.
Well, that was amazing. I mean, I looked at it, and it was probably the brightest and clearest hologram I've seen. I couldn't quite, $7.99 laser.
Yeah.
I think it's, if you're looking at, holography for the people, it certainly seems that it's reached that area,
And for someone who's been involved with holography for a number of years, from a personal standpoint, I feel like a little kid starting all over with it again. It's all a road of discovery and experimentation. And I know you do a lot of single beam work. And these holograms were so bright that I don't see a need for doing split beam, because basically split beam is so that you can get your ratios straightened out in order to brighten up the hologram a little bit, unless you're doing an image plane transfer, but we won't get into that. I promised we wouldn't. So, but for an artist like yourself who works a lot with single beam, in one of the articles or one of the reports that I wrote there, they have that 35 milliwatt Hitachi diode now for $41. And I know the 35 milliwatt Heenies are going for about $4,000, $5,000, $6,000.
Well, I think this is a secret that needs to be broadcasted.
Yeah, it's a great time once again.
I think so. I think so. And I've listened to some of the other, I've listened to Jason Sapan's talk about, holography, and I've listened to, you had him on last January, Dr. Benton, about where it's going, and I know that there are so many issues about compression. And,
yes.
What can you compress and what can hologram? Where can holography go? And I still feel that probably there may be some hybrid form of it that is yet to be discovered.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly think that these breakthroughs that you have discovered and are, pointing other people in this direction.
Yeah. Along with Steve Michael, who's another guy that actually found out by, I don't know if it was by accident or whatever, but he just decided to try it. And I'm trying to take it into the realm of a little bit more advanced techniques and creative techniques, color control and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Well, Arlene, what's in store for the future? Do you have any projects coming up or anything
I don't
that anyone
have
can look forward to?
at this point that I'm involved with, but I'm...
After such a rich history.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, there was a time probably, 10 years ago where I was really pushing it. And, I was trying, like a lot of people, I was trying to make money from it. And at this point, it's an application. I still have, a desire to see holography used more in schools for, perceptual and metaphoric work. I'm very interested to see it used in educational terms for, for viewing. As a visual medium and things that it can convey in subject matters, but I'm not sure if the present state of holography would do that. At this point, I think there's also other kinds of technologies out there that are being developed. As I think I mentioned to you, that I'm looking at things like geographic imaging. Information systems where they take a lot of quantitative data and make it visual so that people see all these numbers but then can actually...
geographical representation of them, right?
Yes, yes. And, they're using it a lot now for the environment and being able to, in a layer sense, understand certain things that are going on within the environment. And a lot of work up in Maine right now with the College of Atlantic, the Maine Island Institute. And so what I'm seeing now is a lot of people are trying to make information visible and visual and trying to layer it. And
you could probably combine that with holography, right?
Right. That could vary. And one of the things, that I've on this sabbatical that I'm on this year, I've been also looking at the internet, and I've been looking at different kinds of technology and visual technology, and one of the things that I see happening is that we seem to have systems for, trying to understand what goes on in the bottom of the ocean,
yeah,
and kind of layering it up to the atmosphere, and how do those things interact with each other?
Mm-hmm. The whole
I think
picture.
they're gathering information on that, but I think on on many levels it's yet to be understood, perhaps, how this all comes together.
Yeah.
So I think it's an exciting time, but at the same it's kind of a little troubling, because I think that we're gathering this information, but we don't quite understand it or know what we're going to exactly do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be a good like push and focus to have that happen.
Well, that's the good side.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking a look at it and trying to understand it.
Right. So I think holography will always be, I'll always be involved with it. I just, at this point, I don't know exactly what next project I have, and it's yet to appear to me, I guess.
Well, I hope whatever it is, I hope you do it with a laser pointer.
Well, I got excited this afternoon looking at it, here, latest thing from 1/12/99,
Yeah.
and I looked at the that fourth one, and I said, my goodness, $7.99 laser. Mm-hmm.
Well, Arlene, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show and tell everybody about your work and what you've done in the past. And
thank you very much. I feel, very honored to be on the first show of the last year of this millennium.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, take care of yourself.
All right, Arlene.
Okay.
If you want to hold on for a second, I'll pick the phone up after I get the headphones off.
Okay.
Okay.